Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So I'm Verwayen. I work at EUROPEANA, and I'll talk you through what that is if you don't know that yet. But first, I'd like you to pause for a second in a side story. So this website may be familiar to most of you. This is the website of Airbnb. At Airbnb, you can find a place to stay if you're in a city, or you can even rent your own apartment if you feel like doing that. If you would have done that in Amsterdam, you would have found thousands of places at comparable prices of the hotels that you probably got, even with the discount that you probably got through Jan. And you would have found an accommodating place, probably, with people who care to share their homes with you. You'd get a good overview of all the things that you can get. As you can see, I have an expensive taste. The places I'd like to stay in that fit my profile are actually in the range of 158 to 48, but I can probably negotiate that down. What they have is a very good and easy interface. They know my profile, they know what I want, they know what kind of city I'm in and what I'm looking for. They've got fantastic imagery. The pictures on there are absolutely splendid. They really invite you to get in there, and you drool even thinking of staying in a place like this. Particularly this one I like, very industrial, and it's just really appealing. They also got some really good information on there, so they force the people who rent their spaces to really give the descriptions that I need to make my decision on. So you see that it tells me how many people can stay there, it tells me that there's a kitchen, there's internet, there's even shampoo in this case, may or may not need that, and it tells you really descriptively what you can expect. So that's good. It also built on trust. It tells me what other people have done. This is an old thing in the internet. You see it everywhere from TripAdvisor and Booking.com. You make your decisions based on what other people, your peers that you trust, tell you. And even better, this also rates you as a renter, so that other people who are thinking of renting their space out to you know what they can expect. Did I clean the toilet after I left? Did I ruin the bed sheets? Did I take out all the shampoo that they were giving me for free? And they make it very attractive for me, and they're trying to lure me into also making my apartment available on Airbnb. Now, I've stayed at Airbnb dozens of times by now. I've stayed in Rome, in Venice, in Amsterdam even, and I live in The Hague, not too far away. Because I just think it's a very nice way of understanding and getting to know a city. And they want me to also put my apartment, I have a house in The Hague, on Airbnb. Not very successfully so far, because I've not been able to negotiate this with my wife. For the one reason that you need to have your house absolutely meticulously clean before they take the pictures, and that we never managed to do. Otherwise, I think we would have done it. So they make sharing extremely attractive. I think that's one of the really good things about Airbnb. And before I go on, may I ask you, who's heard of Airbnb? So that's almost everyone. Not everyone, which is interesting. Who of you has ever stayed at an Airbnb? Okay, that would be about a third of this audience. And now the really interesting question is, who's ever rented their space on Airbnb? 1, 2, 3, 4 people. Okay, 5, there you go. Tom, excellent, yeah, thank you. So you may be staying at Tom's place at a certain point, you never know. Good. All right, so I just want to get an idea of how popular this thing was with you. So these are the guys. It's a typical American success story, Brian, Joe, and Nathan. Brian and Joe are one of those quintessential West Coast American young designers who figured this whole thing out. They figured out that they can't code, and that's how Nathan came in, because you also need someone who's brilliant in coding these things together. Now, they've got this success story, a 5-year success story that goes something like this. So they started in 2007, Brian and Joe. They couldn't pay the rent. That's always a good start of a great story. there was a conference in San Francisco, and they decided, hey, why don't we use our space, the space we already have? We buy a couple of these air mattresses, these inflatable things. We put them on the floor, and we just tell people that they can stay there. And it worked. 3 people signed up. They made $80 each. And then they thought, in the typical American entrepreneurial way, there may be something good in this. How did that move on? They found the other co-founder, the coding guy. They launched the idea as a startup at South by Southwest. Some of you may know that. Big conference in Austin, Texas. There was the little dip somewhere in the beginning that you always have, the catharsis phase, where you say, oh, this is really not going to work. We had 15 people renting spaces in 2 months. It's not going to work. They did something funny. This was at the time of the Obama elections, and they sold cereal boxes with Obama O's for $40 each, made 20,000 euros, and continued. Americans, this is what they do. And I can say it, I'm half American, so this is not... All right, so it went better, and at a certain point, this is a crucial one. I think this is something that we'll talk a bit more about later on. They figured out that it just didn't go fast enough, and they started digging into why is this not going fast enough. And they started to understand, because Brian spent 2 weeks in Airbnbs, every day another Airbnb in New York City. They understood that the people who made really good pictures of their apartment were the ones who, the high sellers. Everyone who made crappy pictures, they weren't appealing enough. So they understood they needed to raise the bar substantially in order to be really successful. And then they did something extremely smart. They said, everyone who wants to rent out their space on Airbnb will send you a photographer for free. We'll send you a photographer, he'll make fantastic pictures with one of those wide-angle lenses. Your apartment looks twice as big as it normally does, but they'll look good. And that's what they did, and that's when it started to really take off. And then they grew, and obviously there was some really stupid venture capitalist who didn't invest in these guys. It's the old story of the Beatles. But then at a certain point, Barry Manilow, the famous singer and drummer, rented the whole house, and then it started to become viral, and then the whole thing took off. And they're now worth 10 billion euros or dollars on the stock market. So that's the story, how they present themselves. Of course, the more interesting parts are the parts of the story that they don't tell in their corporate story, but I think they're at least as valuable and actually even more interesting. So what happens at a certain point, and you may have gone through the thinking process considering renting out your apartment, you may have thought, well, what happens if someone steals grandma's old chandelier, or even worse, wrecks the place? So there was one of these stories, which happened in July of 2011, a story of heavy abuse, so the Troy Denton story. The guy lived in Portland, Oregon, and rented out his space for a weekend, and what happened, he rented it out to one guy, but he threw a huge party in his apartment, and this is how it ended up in the newspapers. They were smoking meth, crystal meth, one of the dangerous drugs you could do, and they absolutely wrecked the place. Obviously something that's not good for the reputation of Airbnb. They're not legally responsible for it, but it's not a great story to tell PR-wise. So after a few hiccups, they decided, okay, we are going to take responsibility for this. Everyone who rents their apartment through Airbnb, we're going to insure up to €1 million. Pretty smart thing to do, because that's the one thing you don't want to take a risk on, is on your apartment. It's already a bit uncomfortable, people walking around through your closet, through your things, the things that are dear to you. So they took out that part of the risk, which was fantastic. So the second thing that happened was a year later, or close to a year later, if you remember, there was this Hurricane Sandy, who really created a lot of misery and havoc in the world. And what these guys understood and did really well is we also have a social responsibility. So what they did is they sent out messages to the people in affected places in the United States. And they said, could you, as a gesture, halve the prices on your apartments just to accommodate all these homeless people? And they did. And lots of people stayed at Airbnb places and were really happy with it. And of course, Airbnb got a really good rep for that. I mean, that's an important thing to do as an organization as big and important as Airbnb. So what happened next? They became really, really popular. They became so popular that by June 2013, they rented out more spaces on Airbnb than the whole Hilton group worldwide. Now then you're starting to really create a disruptive new economy. That means that the old people, the Molochs, the successful companies will start to worry. They will start to worry significantly. And they start lobbying people, saying, what is this? Can now everyone just rent out their place and make money? While we, the professionals, who are used to this, who have taken all kinds of precautions, are losing our business. What's happening? Element of truth in there. I don't disagree on there. But still, so the case that I want to mention here is the case of Nigel Warren, who in June 2013 gets sued by the city of New York. The city of New York sues him because they say it's illegal in the city of New York for short-term leases of your apartment. Nobody ever got that kind of fine before, but because it's an Airbnb case, it became really, really significant. Airbnb community had started to develop, so hundreds of thousands of people are affected by this. You know, Ton here may risk getting fined here in Amsterdam, and so are many people across the world. So they fought the case and they won, but still it's sort of in a gray zone of legality, Airbnb. Right now, so this is mid-2014, Airbnb has 10 million guests who stay there since the launch, 500,000 properties worldwide in 192 countries in the world. And they're, as I said, capped at 10 billion euros or dollars. So I think the reason I'm telling you this is that there's something that we can learn from this. You know, so what is the underlying, the bone structure of the success that we can learn from as a community of archivists? So what did Brian, Joe, and Nathan do really well that distinguished them from all these other thousands of young people in the west coast of America who do something fun and interesting? So I took out two quotes that I thought are really significant for us. The first one is what Brian Chesky said. What we're most pleased about, and what stops us from being your average tour operator, is the personal connections that the community forms. You share your space with somebody, it's about a meaningful experience. And when you think about it, it is the thing that you do when you rent a place at Airbnb. Sometimes if I'm on a business trip, I want to be in an anonymous space. I want to just go to a hotel, get my key. I don't want to talk to anyone. I just want to get to sleep and go back to bed. If I want anything else, if I want to understand the city, if I go to Paris and I have 2 days with my wife or my children, and it is fun to be in a place where someone gives you a little bit more personal feeling. How does a Parisian live? And they'll leave you a bottle of wine, if they're nice. They will leave you with instructions to their favorite restaurants, and that's the thing that sells. People don't go there because it's cheaper, they go there because it's more personal. And that's a really important thing to understand. So it's about authenticity. And I think authenticity, trust, that's something that you see emerging everywhere in the world. It's about meaningful experiences. You don't want the advertised thing, you want the thing that you can get next door. You want real people behind things. The good news for us is that's what you cater in. You as archives are about authenticity. You're about trust. Those are the things that you can sell in the outside world. The second quote I want you to think about is this one. What we're doing with Airbnb feels like the nexus of everything that is right. We're helping people to be more resourceful with the space they already have, and we're connecting people around the world. We can see ourselves doing this for a decade to come, a generation. So I think the thing to think about is the resourcefulness with the space. They already have. They're not inventing anything new. They're not forcing you to buy something new or to sell something new. What they say is, in this economy, we need to stop wasting energy, space, time. We need to make best use of the things that we have. You have an apartment and you may go on a holiday. That apartment is free. Why not have someone else in there? And while this is maybe on this level not too important, I think in general, as an economy, this is the way that we need to think about. So it's about resources. And actually, it's a case of what they call collaborative consumption. And I'd like you to watch for a couple of minutes the film from Rachel Botman on TED, if we can get that.
Today, I'm going to talk to you about the rise of collaborative consumption. I'm going to explain what it is and try and convince you in just 15 minutes that this isn't a flimsy idea or a short-term trend, but a powerful cultural and economic force reinventing not just what we consume, but how we consume. Now, I'm going to start with a deceptively simple example. Hands up, how many of you have books, CDs, DVDs, or videos lying around your house that you probably won't use again, but you can't quite bring yourself to throw away? Can't see all the hands, but it looks like all of you, right? On our shelves at home, we have a box set of the DVD series 24, season 6 to be precise. I think it was bought for us around 3 years ago for a Christmas present. Now, my husband Chris and I love this show. But let's face it, when you've watched it once, maybe or twice, you don't really want to watch it again because you know how Jack Bauer's going to defeat the terrorists. So there it sits on our shelves, obsolete to us, but with immediate latent value to someone else. Now, before we go on, I have a confession to make. I lived in New York for 10 years, and I am a big fan of Sex and the City. Now, I'd love to watch the first movie again as sort of a warm-up to the sequel coming out next week. So how easily could I swap our unwanted copy of 24 for a wanted copy of Sex and the City? Now, you may have noticed there's a new sector emerging called swap trading. Now, the easiest analogy for swap trading is like an online dating service for all your unwanted media. What it does is use the internet to create an infinite marketplace to match person A's haves with person C's wants, whatever they may be. The other week, I went on one of these sites, appropriately called Swaptree, and there were over 59,300 items that I could instantly swap for my copy of 24. Lo and behold, there in Resda, California, was Rondaron, who wanted to swap his or her like-new copy of Sex and the City for my copy of 24. So in other words, what's happening here is that Swaptree solves my carrying company's sugar rush problem, a problem the economists call the coincidence of wants, in approximately 60 seconds. What's even more amazing is that it will print out a postage label on the spot because it knows the weight of the item. Now, there are layers of technical wonder behind such sites such as Swaptree, but that's not my interest, and nor is swap trading per se. My passion, and what I've spent the last few years dedicated to researching, are the collaborative behaviors and trust mechanics inherent in these systems. When you think about it, it would have seemed like a crazy idea, even a few years ago, that I would swap my stuff with a total stranger whose real name I didn't know, and without any money changing hands. Yet 99% of trades on Swaptree happen successfully, and the 1% that receive a negative rating is for relatively minor reasons, like the item didn't arrive on time. So what's happening here? An extremely powerful dynamic that has huge commercial and cultural implications is at play. Namely, that technology is enabling trust between strangers. We now live in a global village where we can mimic the ties that used to happen face to face, but on a scale and in ways that have never been possible before.
Okay, if we could switch back to the presentation. So I wanted to share this with you because I found this immensely interesting and fascinating. We're in a changing world, we're in a changing economy where trust will be the currency of the future. You may ask yourself, what about us? We weren't here to hear about Airbnb or about collaborative economies. You wanted to know about what EUROPEANA does. And you're right. And I will take you there. And I'd like, for the people who don't know EUROPEANA yet, maybe give you a very quick introduction. EUROPEANA was started in 2007 as an initiative, a political initiative from heads of state. So heads of state from France, from Germany got together, wrote a letter to Mr. Barroso and say, hey, Mr. Barroso, it's really important that we keep our culture, our heritage, in a digital form, available for everyone in the future to make use of it. Yes, said Mr. Barroso, I think that's a great idea. We need to do something about it. And we started off in 2008 with 1.2 million in seed funding, if you want. We created a website. We rallied around some people, some, let's say, launching customers. ENA was one of them, to share their metadata with us and make that available. And that was a good starting point. 5 years later, this is not the success story of Brian, Joe, and Ethan. We have 30 million objects from every member state in Europe in 34 languages available through one single interface in a database. And we do lots of things around it. So there is some success there. I think the real success is that we've been able to do this together with currently 2,500 institutions, and thousands of individuals are now part of the network. And I know many of you are. I think that's the real crucial, fundamental thing that we've changed, is that instead of doing all these things individually and trying to solve that, we decided that there may be a lot of worth in doing that together under the flag of what we call EUROPEANA. Now, this title of this presentation was called Uncensored, so you're not here to just hear the good things from me. We've had some tremendous problems. We've had tremendous problems surfacing 34 languages of metadata into one single interface. It's nearly impossible to do that well. You still won't find the search experience you get through Google if you search for anything, be it Van Gogh or Matisse. Google will show you more relevant results immediately than you will find on EUROPEANA generally. And that sucks, and it's something that we need to work on together. The crucial aspect of that is that the search function and the interface will be as good as the data underneath it. What's also true is that the society that we live in has evolved. The expectations from people 5 years ago were a lot lower than they were currently. 5 years ago, a picture of 200 by 200 pixels was fine for your average use. Currently, with everyone having tablets and retina interfaces, 2448 by 1536 is about average what you get. And that's not even for real creative reuse. So we have a problem, and we want to solve that with you. So what is necessary to do that? What is necessary for us to become the Airbnb of cultural heritage? Because that's really what this story is leaning you towards. And that I'm going to try to explain to you in the following slides. So if you think about Airbnb as a multi-sided platform, that's sort of the business terminology that you use for it, a peer-to-peer multi-sided platform. You have people who have apartments for rent, and you have people who have a need for places to stay. It's that simple. You bring these two together, you form a marketplace for it, you build trust into that system, and then if you do these things well, things will blossom. So the question that I'm trying to put into your heads is, can we think of EUROPEANA as such a platform? A multi-sided platform that negotiates between people who have cultural heritage to share, that's you, with people who want that in whatever form or shape, on whatever platform that they can use it on, and for professional reuses. Would that be a thing that you think is worthwhile investing? I think the answer to that is only if you feel that value flows equally through that system. It won't work if you feel that you're giving away your best stuff and someone else runs away with it. Worse, if someone else makes money of it and you don't get anything from it, that would absolutely suck. But it would work, I think, if you feel that by giving better and better stuff, you get a lot of love coming back from people who use it. You'll see traffic exploding to your website. You'll see people even engaged in co-creation with you to develop new applications, to develop new services. So this is the model that we're trying to investigate. And we're doing that against the background, especially in the European Union, where we know that we have a dwindling economy. We need to revitalize ourselves. We as an industry, we as Europeans, we as people. And that's the background at, we think, creative industries, cultural and creative industries, that's us again, really have an important role to play in the economy. So there's a 4% of the GDP in Europe currently consists of cultural and creative activities, and that is one of the fastest growing ones. That's why people are so interested in us. That's why people are prepared to invest in us. So how would that work in practice? So let's look at our cultural heritage, our apartments, our assets. What does it look like in Europeana currently? So if you look at this whole big mountain up here, that's all the cultural heritage that's available in Europe. Now only the top part of that, 10%, is already digitized. That's still 300 million objects, 300 million apartments that you can throw out there for rent and that people might be interested in, theoretically, right? The problem is that of all these apartments, of all these 300 million, only 2% are legally labeled for reuse. 2% of that is available for renting. All the other ones are closed. Door closed, you can't go to Tom, you can't go to Jan, you can't come into my apartment. So that's not great. If you look at that from a macroeconomic return on investment, if you know that all of this costs hundreds of millions to digitize, and you can only do something with 2% of the 10% that has been digitized, that's not a great situation. Still, we think that that's what we need to do. We need to make sure that not the pile of digitized materials necessarily grows, but the stuff that is digitized becomes more accessible, more reusable. Right. So, in this pile, your stuff is in here. 11.4 million video items are somewhere in that pile of digitized material. At least that is something that the people from EU Screen told me is true. So what's the situation with Europeana? So Europeana is a database that harvests the metadata of that 10% that has been digitized. And we currently have about 12% of that 10%, so 32 million objects. That's what we have. That's what we have to play with. The good news is that with us, the equation of reusable stuff versus non-reusable stuff is a lot better. We already claim 35% is reusable. Now, do you all know what we mean on the legal terms of this, reusable, non-reusable? So, Creative Commons, that rings a bell with most of you, I would think. So what we call reusable is anything that's in the public domain or has been labeled explicitly for reuse. So that's where the Creative Commons licenses come in. So what we call open are all the open Creative Commons licenses, CC BY, CC BY SA, etc. But what is also reusable is if you say it's reusable, you have to tell who it came from, and you cannot use it for commercial purposes. Also fine, we call that reusable. Then as a reuser, at least I know that I need to ask permission, and I can ask permission, right? Okay. We accept that the large majority currently still is unusable, at least reusable. You can look at it on our website. You may find it in a blog post, but that's it. And I think that's okay. I mean, certain material, especially your material, 20th century material, we know there are huge copyright issues. So we're not trying to blame anyone, but what we do try to do is make sure that we become the largest database, the largest repository of reusable and known reusable material. So what does the future look like? We are currently, like I said, at 35%. We actually are already moving. By the end of the year, we'll have 47%, so close to half of our database will be reusable. And we want to move to a larger database, but like I said, big doesn't mean anything anymore. We are looking for the quality with a better equation between reusable and non-reusable. I think then we will be in a very good position to start really contributing to that booming economy, to become an Airbnb of reusable cultural heritage. Okay. This is to show you that only 3% of the videos in EUROPEANA are open, for known reasons. Again, that's not to blame anyone, but it's just a fact of life. So, just to make it absolutely plain what I mean, we want less of this. Forgot to label these out. I'm not trying to blame anyone, but a little bit of metadata. There's no preview, and it's got a free access thing. And this is not particular to this case, but most of the times it leads you to something like this. You have no access. So basically, you can do anything with it. And what we'd like to get is a lot more of this. So this is metadata in 2 languages, at least in Dutch and in English. It gives you geolocation data, which is absolutely important and crucial if you want to do anything on mobile these days. And it gives you a license and a link that tells you, I can do something with it. I can use this film as long as I say who it is from, and I'm going to share it along on the same conditions. And that is how you get what the Netherlands Institute of Sound and Vision with their Polygoon archive is currently doing. So most of the things that they can make accessible under an open license, they will. I want to pause on this for a second because no, it's a bit controversial. I know we're all under pressure to also make money. You are, right? All of you are being cut. All of you are under pressure to also work with creative industries, bend over backwards and make money. I know it feels we're under the same pressure. What I invite you to think about is that the problem you're facing on the money side is nothing compared to the problem you're facing on staying relevant in the 21st century. And staying relevant in the 21st century means that you make open whatever you can, because you know that there's value in people just visiting it, talking about it, sharing it, and that will increase your reputational value, it will increase your traffic, and indirectly it will increase your ways to monetize. And you can develop services on top of that, all kinds of things. But this is the revolution that we're all facing. If we don't accept this, then we'll become irrelevant before we know it. Okay, so how about people who want to rent your apartment? Are there people interested in this? That's also an assumption. We don't really know that when we started digitizing all this stuff, right? We've always had a bit of a luxury there where we said, yeah, you know, even if people don't really watch it, it's really crucial for our society to have the stuff available. For the one researcher who will step up at a certain point and say, hey, I need that material. I think that's still true. I think there's an element of truth in there. That's the role of libraries. You're not there to commercially exploit it per se. You're there for the long haul. You're there for the next 500 years. Who knows what else someone will find interesting at a certain point. Still, you want to have some proof that people are interested in some of your material, right? Otherwise, it will be very hard to convince people to keep investing in us. So what does that look like? The good news, again, is that we get signal after signal at EUROPEANA that people value the fact that we have the trusted source. If you come to EUROPEANA and you find something, you know it is a trusted source because it comes from you. And you are a trusted source in the minds of people, whether you're in education, in tourism, or just an individual trying to figure out what happened to his father a long time ago. So there is definitely that. We also know that inviting people to a huge bucket of things is not necessarily a very appealing experience. You come to the EUROPEANA website, you type something and you may find or you may not find something. So we believe that the way to move forward on this is to be much more specific, to be much more thematic in our approach. The best experience that we've had so far was with our 14-18 campaigns. Have you heard of the EUROPEANA 1914-1918 campaigns, just to give you an idea? Yeah, some of you, yeah, good. We found that a fascinating experience. We nicked an idea from Oxford University, and the idea was fabulous. You invite people to share whatever you have in your attic from your great-great-grandfather who lived through that experience, and you bring that to a place, could be a library, could be a museum, could be an archive, and you share that, you digitize that, and in the process of digitizing all this material, you get all these kinds of information. You get old people who get connected to the internet, and young people who start to understand their past, and this has been an incredible experience. We've had 600,000 items, which combine to about 5,000, let's say, stories, personal stories from about 10,000 people from 20 countries in Europe. And we now have the largest database of all this material, of World War I material, personal stories, let's say, in the world. And all of this has been digitized in reasonable resolution. It's been published under CC by SA license, so you can actually do something with it. And of course, this year is an important year. It's the 100th anniversary of the start of the war. So by November 11th next month, we think that a lot of things will happen through this. But it told us that we needed to be much more specific. People are not interested in cultural heritage. People are interested in my grandfather's experience in the First World War. And how was it at the other side of the trenches? That's what you want to know. So what we're going to do is replicate that, and we're going to next year launch a lot of new thematic sites, which we call channels. Here's an example of EUROPEANA fashion. That's also a topic that you can imagine a lot of appeal comes from, right? If Dior shares their collections of posters, etc., that's something that people will be interested in. What we're going to do with it, unclear. We don't know yet. We'll make it available on the website, but there may be hackathons, there may be other things that we can do with it. Similarly, we could do something on music. We have ideas to do something around the theme of Roma in Europe. You can imagine all kinds of things. And you are invited to use this platform and use it for your own purposes. In 2014, we think we can get about 6 million visits on EUROPEANA. So that's EUROPEANA proper and EUROPEANA 1914-1918 and a couple of other sites. Now, does that sound impressive to you? No? No, okay. Anyone who says yes, 6 million is good? Yeah, oh yeah, good, not bad. No, it's not bad, not good. Actually, that's my feeling as well. It's not bad, not good. Actually, it stacks out really nicely if you look at what we would call competitors. So if you look at the British Library or Gallica in France, those are sites who get about the same amount of visitors. Not spectacular, it's not a Google by any means. It's not an Airbnb either. Not bad either, you still get 6 million visits for your collections. But we believe that the way to look at this should be absolutely different. This is only people coming to your door, but the real value is probably where people can see it in places that they already go to. So what we do whenever we get the chance is plug it in our Pinterest boards. We now have about 35 on various topics, and they get visited really well. So this is the Moving Past animated GIFs. Really a fun site, and it works pretty well. We start experimenting with sites like this. Retronaut, who's heard of Retronaut? Super cool site, you have to look at it if it's amazing stuff, right? It's
each and every day they get a new thing.
Yeah.
It always makes me laugh.
Yeah, it always makes you laugh. I think that's a really important point. So Chris Wilde, who started this thing, is a flawed archivist. He calls that himself. He's a guy who actually doesn't want to live in the present. He wants to live in the past. And he's also got some really funny ideas about how these things work. So he serves you up, and it's on the dot. 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, right? Like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, let's say. He serves you up with things that are interesting, that are appealing, that are slightly disruptive, that you feel uncomfortable about. So this was one of the things that we put on Retronaut. We worked with him for a while just to experiment. So this is a photograph of 1930s nose jobs, plastic surgery. which comes from the Bibliothèque Nationale de France. We put it on Retronaut, and it immediately got viral. Got picked up by a magazine in Hungary on plastic surgery, and then it exploded on Europeana, and then it went much wider than just this picture. So anything that had to do with plastic surgery, by far and large, got more views through this. So here we're finding patterns that we want to replicate. If we're being smarter about using the fantastic work that this guy does, and don't underestimate him, this guy has 200,000 followers on Facebook. It's amazing. Then you'll start to see a lot of additional traffic, a lot of additional visibility to things that otherwise would have just been dusted in your attics. I think we're doing pretty well. We have about 70,000 Facebook fans ourselves, and we think that this is an important mechanism to expose the material that we get through our partners. Twitter, idem dito, we have about 18,000 followers, and these are the things that we want to invest in the future. For one reason, and that is that we get 63 million impressions on external platforms. I can show you statistics about this, and maybe you'll get the chance to do this later on during the conference. Wikipedia is another one of those extremely interesting examples. I think Open Images posted as little as about 1,000 images on Wikipedia, and they got 40 million impressions on that in about 2 years. So if you think about the equity that you have, the material that you have digitized in a way like this, so it's not only about how many people come to you and eventually buy the thing, but it is how many people have shown an interest, looked it up on a place that they're comfortable with, shared it, talked about it, then I think you have a mindset that prepares you for the 21st century. You have an additional advantage. This came from one of our studies. Video is viewed 10 times as much as other media on Europeana. I don't even know how that works anywhere else. But anywhere where it says video or moving image in Europeana, people are 10 times more likely to click on it and be interested in it. Yeah, because it's the way that we communicate these days. All right. So how about you? You are the professionals, you are the people who have the places that you can rent out on this Airbnb for cultural heritage, if you feel like it. So what would it take to get you to put your place up, take some great pictures, and see what you can get from it? This is our professional reuse section. These are the section that you may, as broadcasters, feel quite comfortable with. You feel probably more comfortable than the other people we talk to, and that are part of our network. The museums or archives in particular have no idea how this works. You do. You work with professionals all the time. So we started a website and a service called Europeana Labs. It's not new, everyone has a labs these days. But here we make available all of our best material, all the material that we think is suitable for creative reuse. And not only that, we'll create conferences, we'll invite developers, smart developers with good ideas to challenges, to hackathons, to play around with the stuff and do something interesting with it. So then you get things like this, which has been a huge hit, particularly in the UK. So you twin pictures of yourself replicating an image. Sounds silly, right? But it's absolutely the thing to do on parties these days, especially on conferences. And that gets viral. And also things like this. So this was the winner of the Apps for Europe award. It's interesting to do this here because Waag Society is one of the leading coordinators of that project. And we're starting to get to a point where we're not dealing only with half-baked ideas and prototypes anymore. I have hundreds of those. I'm not interested in anymore. I'm interested in things like this. Things that smart cities, or like Siena, but this can be replicated anywhere, who have ambitions to do something and get more cultural tourists into their city, can use Europeana material, curate it, contextualize it, and do some funny and interesting new things with it on applications. So this one happens to be based on beacon technology. I don't know if you know about that, but that allows you to have much more granular geolocation capabilities than you'd ever get through GPS. So I think there's a big revolution going on over there. So these are the types of things that we can do, and we can do that better in this network that we call Europeana than I think most of you could do individually. And I think that's the point I'm trying to make. Okay, now back to you, people who have the apartments. What do you need from this? How can I convince you to share your very best material and not the thing someone has ironically said, sometimes Europeana seems like the place that people put their stuff that they don't care losing. And I want to get away from that, because that's not what will make Europeana work. Europeana will work if you're prepared to give your very best thing away. And it's not a way you need to even think differently. You need to think giving things away is not losing something, it's gaining something. So we know that you need to get statistics. We also know that you have particular areas of concern. Copyright being one of them is really complicated. On the technology side, video is a completely different animal from archival material, etc. So how we're dealing with that is that we have, in your case, EU Screen. EU Screen has been in existence for about 10 years. It's been an aggregator to Europeana, but it's become much more than that. We're in the process of transforming aggregators into knowledge hubs, if you want, who cater specifically to your needs. They understand you more than anyone else can. So, lots of practical applications, lots of advocacy. I think that's the thing that we need to really do in this particular field. Changing copyright regulations, I think, is one of the primary things, especially cross-border. Broadcasters are very limited to their own nationalities. And these are the things that we can do together. This one already mentioned. I think Open Images is a great example of how these things could work. It's not that the website itself is great, but it tells you that if you prepare the material in a way suitable for Open Images, it can go anywhere. We call this create once, publish everywhere mentality. This is a funny thing that I came across. Upload Cinema, I don't know if you know it. I think this is fantastic. So this is an initiative that's become hugely popular, where people nowadays watch a lot of videos on YouTube, for example, and they bring online back to the physical world. So they organize showings and screenings of things that only exist on the web and bring that back into a cinema, for example. They charge a fee for it, and they make tons of money. It's funny, but it works this way. All right, the last thing that I wanted to bring to your attention, because this is the latest development of what we're doing, Europeana TV, it's called. It's a pilot. It's run under the project Europeana Space, and it will allow us to do two things. One is a local scenario where you have an elderly in the living room, for example, watching the Olympics, and you have her grandson, for example, on a tablet showing grandma, is this what it looked like in the 1960s? And you'll start to have those type of connections. So that's one area of exploration. And the second thing is a broadcast scenario where you work with smart TVs. This one's already in existence, about the fall of the Berlin Wall, and which again will be on the 9th of October, will be the big day of the fall of the wall. And then you'll find on your smart TV all kinds of relevant archival footage from that period. I'll take you quickly through this. Okay, I want to leave you with this. So if you can imagine the idea of becoming, in this hub that we call Europeana, an Airbnb for cultural heritage, we need to agree on some ground rules, right? That's how Airbnb works. Airbnb works with lots of these rules, which are simple but very clear. You can't pay in cash, for example, is one of those rules. You need to pay in advance so that there will be no hassle, no possibility of hassle afterwards. I think these are the types of rules that we need to agree on together as a network as well, when it comes to our material. And we're starting to develop them along these type of lines. What you deliver needs to be absolutely clear. What are the minimal requirements for that? And what can you expect from it? So we have organized ourselves around a task force, which will be delivering something by the end of the year, which will flush this out. But it will be along these lines. We're welcoming everyone who has a minimal set of metadata that conforms to our licensing framework, that has a minimal set of metadata, that has a link in there either directly to the object or to a web page, and with a minimum preview of 400 pixels. We can show you on the portal. It's already good for a lot of people. It's simple, it's easy. Of course, the trick will be to invite people to share more and more, so that you end up with at least that 60% that is reusable, freely reusable, has lots of interesting metadata, a permanent direct link, something reasonable that you can chew on as a creative, 300 DPI, for example, and then the portal, Lightbox's channel, we can put you, we're doing a deal with iTunes U these days. They also have specific demands. We can put you in hackathons. We can make you available in these smart cities of Siena. And we can put you on Wikipedia, social media. We can explode the traffic to your connections. So, I hope that this has given you some food for thought. I think we're in a very interesting situation where we need you to get more involved. We need you to get involved in the EUROPEANA network. We need you to help solve these copyright issues. We need to find new business models together. That's the first thing that we need to do. Secondly, we need you to share your data. We need you to share the very best that you have under the conditions that you can. And I promise you that we can do something interesting with it, completely within the boundaries of legality and trust that you should be used to. And finally, I'd like you to explore, to use the data in EUROPEANA. There's fantastic things in there that you can reuse in the applications that you're developing with your data and your content. So I'd like to leave it at this. And thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Harry. That was very interesting, definitely food for thought, and probably also food for discussion. I already see one hand, but I'm sure there will be more, so we'll try to get to you as it goes. So, Brecht.
Thank you, Harry, for a very inspiring talk. I know that many, Broadcasters Archive, the first question they will ask is what's in it for us, and you have stressed on a few points your unique selling proposition there. But nevertheless, you mentioned the word statistics. And wouldn't it be good or great if you could directly provide an interface where Broadcasters Archive could immediately log into the reuse statistics of their stuff, item per item, so that they can directly prove the relevance towards their boards and their funders?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And we're making that. We'll be launching that it's next week already in Madrid.
Did you practice this?
Yeah. No, but I think you're absolutely right. I think it's been one of the weakest points of EUROPEANA that we were banking on the trust of the institutions to give us stuff, and we never gave firm proof of what happened afterwards. So that's where we're heavily investing in that. It's not easy, by the way. It's easy to share the stuff that we get through Google Analytics, but it's not easy to for all the data providers show you what's happening on social media. But yeah, definitely working on that. Thank you for that.
The question was if he was paid for that question.
Yeah.
He wasn't. Yeah. So this was. Any other comments, questions?
Hi, thank you, Harry, for an excellent presentation. I'm from the Danish Broadcasting Corporation, and we're partners in the EU Screen project and the EU XL. And I found that one of the problems we have in Denmark, and I found it's different in the countries, but in Denmark it's a problem that the contract we have with the state doesn't really recognize the contribution towards EUROPEANA and other EU projects. Yeah. I mean, on a high level, political level, they say and want and do, but when it comes down to negotiating the final contract on the 4 billion Danish kroners we get a year, it's not really something we're measured on. So it's a losing battle internally to prioritize these collaborations. Yeah. So I'm just wondering if you could elaborate just briefly, or at least take it back with you, that it's difficult, at least for the small countries who doesn't really, they see a need to being part of Europe, but it's not really part of their governing contracts. It's not for you to solve, but it's a problem.
Well, yeah. I think one of the strengths of EUROPEANA is, thank you for that remark, is that we can operate on many levels. So we operate on a data manager level, but we also operate on a fairly high political level in the European Parliament, but also with member states. I think that is absolutely something that we're working on. I can show you statistics all you want, but if the people who you have to show it to don't believe in them, then it's a bit of a moot exercise. I still think it's relevant because even if they don't believe it up there, the world around us is changing. But I think it's a very valid point. We need to convince policymakers to judge the institutions on completely different metrics. It's not how many people walk into your museum all the time. That's a 19th century metric. It's how many people have had a relevant experience using the material that you're shepherding, right? Yeah, but we're not there yet. That's true. Yeah.
I'm from a broadcaster as well, and very like the issues that Tobias has just raised there from RT in Dublin, and we publish material through Uscreen and on Europeana. And I think that there's two issues that I'd like to address. I think the idea of, it very follows on from the keynote this morning, the idea of creating some kind of a network that we can work through. The position of the archives within the broadcast world is such that even if we do have a measurement, it's often quite small. I'm actually going to be talking about value tomorrow. And how do you define that? How do you get yourself more visible in the value chain of a broadcaster in particular, but also in a national institution at government level? I think Europeana does need to kind of help us a little bit and help us to be kind of made more visible within our own communities. So we talk here, but when, right now there's a lot going on in the television world, and the archives are finding it hard to get heard in that world, even though they have a lot to contribute because they hold the content. Yeah. But it's a really difficult time financially. So we need help to help you, you to help us. It really needs a much more collaborative approach than I think there has been to date. So that's just my thought on it. But I think you're going in the right direction.
Thank you. I think that's exactly what I'm trying to say here. So we need to help each other. That's how platforms work. But my question to you would be: what kind of help do you expect from Europeana? If I could.
I think that you made a very important statistical statement at the very start of your presentation about how much material remains undigitized. I'm chair of the Save Your Archive program of Fiat. It astounded me when Europeana started, and that nobody wanted to talk about the fact that all this cultural heritage was rotting. And it's still rotting. So I think that's the first thing. I think at that point needs to be made over and over again. You are in a position to do it. You can't solve the problem, but there's no funds for it. None whatsoever. So we struggle. So we have to continually look for them. So that's the first. The second, I think, is really maybe becoming more visible within the mainstream media world in however you can do that and bring the archives with you. And, we are doing that in the archive world a lot. We are trying to become more mainstream in the media world. And I think that is another way you can help us.
Yeah, I think a true point. I think the difficulty we have is that in terms of the digitization aspect, I fully agree with you and feel with you. There's rotting material, and especially AV material is extremely sensitive to that. The problem we have is that there is a political unwillingness at this point to invest further before we show results that they can unambiguously understand to be successful. I think that's the big challenge that we have, all of us. So I think we need to keep hammering down the point that we need to do that, but we also need to show collaboratively what the success stories are, case studies of success. So in that case, I think we really can help each other. Yeah. Right.
There's one question.
Yes. Here, Harry, here, to your right. Daniel, speak.
Daniel, hello.
Harry, give us some numbers. How many videos and audio files are represented in the 33 million? And how can this community contribute to enrich Europeana from the audiovisual point of view?
Sorry, the first one was how many items?
How many videos and audio files are represented in Europeana?
461,000 and something, I think.
So that's neither low, neither high.
Yeah, so it's close to 500,000. I mean, that's not too bad.
So how can the audiovisual community contribute? Maybe you should explain our members how to get in touch with you, how to work with you.
Yeah, so on the logistical level, how that works is you either have a national aggregator. In Germany, you have a couple of strong ones. In France, you have in Spain. In other countries, the national initiatives are not as strong. Netherlands is very strong, by the way. Or you go to EU Screen. I think EU Screen for you is your natural habitat to send your material to, and you'll find all the information that you need on that website. Now, if the question would be, if I can reinterpret the question, Daniel, to what do we need most? I think what we need most is for you who have archives that you own to have to adopt that policy of open unless. The biggest problem that we have is not the half a million video items on Europeana. It's the fact that only 3% of that is reusable. So whenever you can do that, we'd be extremely happy and grateful, and we hope to show you the returns that we talked about. Yes? Thank you.
There was one more question there, but before we go to that, I have a question myself as well. I mean, being the World Conference of the Fiat IFTA, not all the members at Fiat IFTA are from the EU, are within the EU, and I was wondering if you know of any grassroots movements or even quite advanced movements elsewhere in the world, outside the EU, that show similar progress where we can learn from, or is there anything you can ask members outside the EU how they can contribute or even share ideas with you?
Well, first of all, Europeana is primarily an EU-run thing, but we're open to anything that's relevant to Europe, let's say. And then that already opens the doors to a lot of things. The problem is we can't fund or any of the things that are outside of the EU. There are some really good grassroots movements elsewhere. The DPLA, the Digital Public Library of America, is one. Now, I'll grant that's primarily a library environment. But in the United States, you have the Internet Archive. We're big fans of them. I think working with them for anyone in the United States is a great thing to do. There are some South Asian Pacific movements, which are primarily led through Australia, through the archive there called Trove. And they also they can help you with all kinds of legal issues and IPR issues and technical and data issues. So, yeah.
Thank you. There was one person there. I thought, no, well, I'll just...
Thank you. Arik Bernstein from Israel. I've been working pretty extensively in the past, I'd say about 10 years, and now both in Israel and worldwide with 8mm and Super 8mm home movies. And I was wondering if your project, Europeana, you have some kind of... I mean, we all know that there are millions and millions and millions of hours out there which are probably in 5 to 10 years will be gone. Yeah. And I'm wondering if you have any kind of program or outreach collecting or digitizing or elsewhere these kind of home movies.
Okay, so the question is home movies, how do we deal with that? Is that correct, sir?
And if you have in Europeana some kind of outreach specifically for home movies.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I must say, Europeana is not a digitization initiative. We do something with stuff that is digitized. Only in certain cases, like the one that I mentioned on the World War I, we are starting to actively get into digitizing because we fill a gap that no one else is filling, which I think is what you were referring to, right? So no one else, no institution by themselves starts asking people, okay, do you have any diaries from your grandfather or letters or anything else, and digitize that. We have a program called European Film Gateway. I don't know if you heard of that, EFG. Those would be the people who are closest to your question, I think. It's still, at the end of the day, it's a question of money, to be honest. It's very difficult to do these things. But they would be the ones that I would recommend you talking to. And we'd be very happy to showcase it in Europeana, obviously, once it's done. But that's not your problem at this point. Yeah? Thank you.
There's one question in the back here.
It's more of a little statement than a question. For people who are interested in the Uscreen, we're just around the corner where you had lunch. So you can come up and talk to us. And about the topic of home movies, this is something that also within the Uscreen we're collecting because it's a responsibility of the archives, I think, to take care of this heritage. At Sound and Vision, we set up a platform for home movies, for example. We have the South England Screen Archive that's also collecting home movies. So those are via those aggregating routes coming into Europeana.
Yeah. Thanks, Aaron.
We're sort of, oh God, this is loud. We're sort of running out of time. If there's maybe room for one more question, comment, statement, sales pitch, anything.
Well, I just wanted to say in regards to the labs that I think it's really interesting, and I think that speaking from a broadcast point of view, you say, give us your best stuff. And I've been carrying the torch with some good colleagues in the room on working on a more long-tail strategy for the Danish Broadcasting Corporation and trying to make more, maybe even the entire archive available. It seems that this strategy is not really winning the minds and hearts of the broadcast industry, which are primarily focusing on cherry picking. And I think it would be interesting if you could help this community to cherry pick elsewhere than just to define what is the best stuff, because the archives are filled with great stuff.
Yeah.
And right now, we're focusing on the top 10. And I think that's a really pity. And I think that if you could generate showcases as the ones you showed here and others, it might be easier for the archives to focus on picking stuff and showing value where value is not as obviously seen within the broadcast industry. So that's just an idea, and I hope you'll develop that further. Thank you.
I think that's a great point. We'll consider it a sales pitch then. Right?
I think that was a nice closing statement, wasn't it? Well, I'd like to ask one more round of applause for Harry, who even left the birthday party of his son to be here with us. So,
thank you.